Just in my last review of WataMote, I said in that video, the only character I disliked was Minami. Minami is probably the only character I dislike in the series, but not because she's written bad or anything of the sort. Minami has great potential to grow as a character, in fact, because she's almost hit rock bottom, so the sky is the limit. I do wonder how Nico Tanigawa is going to use her in the future. 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 2 chapters after that, we get a Minami focused art that forced me to change my opinion on her because as of right now, I like her. While this video will be covering the 5 chapters I have not talked about, most of my attention will be devoted to the star of these chapters, Koharu Minami. In pretty much every panel we've seen of Minami, she's been an asshole. She fits the mean girl archetype to a T. Minami is the kind of girl that will migrate to the popular clique and talk shit about others as a hobby, which she did frequently. While Minami's story is not done, every reader can see the path of redemption she is currently walking. However, while the character art started a couple of chapters ago, the seeds for what's happening now were planted a while back, which I'll explain. Throughout WataMote, you often would see Minami accompanied by her group of friends, quotation on friends, and together those 4 make up what I call the mean girls. These girls minus Minami are easy to forget, partly because they don't or didn't have faces, but at the very least, Sachi has been around since chapter 107. So the first thing Nico Tanigawa did with the mean girls was establish a culture between them. Minami and the rest of the girls badmouth other people even when they're not grouped up, but again, what we learn about this group is that they all have a toxic habit of making fun of others. It's important that the mean girls have this hive mind mentality because it adds the element of peer pressure being a factor. That doesn't excuse their actions, but it makes you understand them. No one except maybe Sachi, who I'll talk about later, wants to be the odd girl out in their squad. Thus, everyone acts like a jackass because they all believe that's the cool thing to do. So even if one of the girls feels like what they're doing is wrong, chances are they won't speak up for fear of being ostracized by the group. I personally love how Nico Tanigawa is able to create these dynamics seemingly under our noses. The conflict between these girls was brewing many chapters ago, but Nico Tanigawa cleverly weaves in these subplots out of focus, and then all of a sudden, before you know it, he'll hit you with chapters like these that'll make you appreciate the groundwork he put in previously. Back to Minami. As I said, the culture of the mean girls was already established. Along with that was this culture being shattered by other characters on at least 3 different occasions. Let's run through them in chronological order. The first time comes in a bonus chapter of volume 12 of WataMote. Here, Minami attempts to shit talk Tomoko to Nemo, unaware that they are friends. So when she insults Tomoko and Nemo doesn't join in, it kinda shakes her up. The second cultural shock happens in chapter 128. Here, Minami again tries to shit talk Tomoko, only to be met with the unamused faces of Asuka and Akane. Then, after Minami struggles to break the awkward silence by switching the target to Nemo, it backfires horribly as Akane, who is best friends with Nemo, tells her off. Lastly, you had the events in chapter 163. Here, Minami overhears Uchi calling Tomoko creepy and uses that opportunity to pile on the slander, hoping to make a friend in the process. But once again, Minami's mean girl culture is rejected, this time by Uchi, who after seeing Minami try to make fun of Tomoko, says, and I quote, "Don't ever show your disgusting face in this classroom again, motherfucker." Alright, she didn't say that last word, but you get the point. You see, while those moments were certainly funny, it wasn't just that. The purpose was to have Minami experience opposition to her mean girl culture that had been tolerated by her friends. This forced Minami into a corner where her personality will only be accepted by a few people, the mean girls, the couple, and Mako. And even with that, we as an audience understood that these weren't true friends to Minami. Minami herself has stated that she doesn't like to hang out with the mean girls because they poke fun at her constantly. She doesn't like the couple she eats lunch with much or the shitty food they eat, and with Mako, that friendship relies on Mako's kindness. They're mostly together because Mako feels obligated to ensure that Minami isn't lonely, rather than them having a mutual fondness of each other. However, it seems Minami has her first genuine friendship with none other than Emoji Mart 2, aka Shiki Futaki. Initially, this relationship started off as superficial, with Minami befriending Futaki simply out of desperation, but the more they talk, the more it seems that their relationship has morphed into a normal and healthy friendship. This is further emphasized by Minami hesitating to join up with the mean girls when they ridicule her for spending time with Futaki and her arcade pals, whom they refer to as creeps. By good fortune though, the mean girls finally imploded in chapter 189. The bad mouthing of these girls came back to bite them in their asses. No doubt, this group's fragile friendship was going to dissolve eventually, but what's interesting to note is that Sachi primarily facilitated bringing about the demise of the mean girls. Again, I'm saving Sachi for later. With the mean girls disbanding, I think this is an opportunity for all of those girls to become better people. The girls have to take personal responsibility for how they acted, but obviously, being in that group encouraged everyone to be a worse version of themselves. When it comes to Minami, just how the culture of the mean girls influenced her to act like an asshole, the new circle of friends I believe she will have will lead her character in a positive direction. I don't think Minami will drastically change, but I think she'll be more considerate. We already seen glimpses of this in chapter 189 when Minami judges the mean girls' typical bad mouthing as cynical and lame. As well, in chapter 188, Minami is hesitant to join Futaki's group because she shit-talked them in the past, understanding that they probably dislike her. Now, while Minami didn't make amends to Futaki's friends, her simply acknowledging her faults is a key step for her to trend upwards. The last thing I want to cover about Minami is her interesting contrast to Tomoko. In the beginning, Tomoko's image was that of a creepy and antisocial girl, while Minami was the cute and popular girl. However, the deeper we got into the series, we start to see the reputation of these characters switch. And at some point, they sort of mirror each other. What Tomoko and Minami have in common is their strive for popularity, which stems from them being very self-conscious about how they appear to others. And if you don't see it, I'll use chapters 79 and 129 to drive home my idea. In chapter 79, Tomoko is on a field trip where she ends up traveling alone due to her feeling out of place with her group. By chance, Tomoko encounters Ito and Kame, with the latter showing Tomoko pity by offering her a place in her group. Tomoko is mortified at appearing to be friendless and having pity thrown in her direction, especially by Kame, so she quickly declines Kame's offer and regroups with her original party, despite feeling like the odd man out. 50 chapters later, we have an identical moment with Minami. Here, Minami has separated from her original group after Akane chewed her out, and she drifts aimlessly before she encounters the mean girls. The mean girls offer Minami a spot in their group, but not before pointing out that she is all alone, which hurts Minami's pride, leading her to turn them down, eventually joining Mako. Bringing these two situations together, what is honed in on is Tomoko and Minami's insecurities. At that point, Tomoko wasn't someone who was comfortable being viewed as a loner, which also applies to Minami. The want to be popular for these two is an attempt to patch up the anxiety they feel when alone. Where these two diverge though is how they form bonds with other people. Over time, Tomoko started to have people gravitate towards her, having her friendships grow organically. This is in part because characters identify themselves with a part of Tomoko. For example, Nemo feels at ease showing Tomoko her otaku side, and Yuri feels as if her and Tomoko are kindred spirits, with both of them being introverted loners. The point is, Tomoko's friends became her friends because of the real her, so I think of Tomoko's circle as a naturally seeded plant. Initially, it didn't seem like much, but it sprouted with time, so much so that when we look at it now, it became a tree. Conversely, Minami's friend group was like a store-bought flower. On the surface, it certainly looked more well off than Tomoko's plant initially, but the difference was Tomoko's plant had roots, it had a foundation, it had the potential to grow. Minami's flower peaked at the start, so it became stagnant and over time, withered altogether. Just like Tomoko though, I think when Minami settles into a friend group, she will start to forget or realize that being popular isn't all it's cracked up to be. Now, let's get to Futaki. First, I want to say Futaki has always been a hilarious character to me because she looks so unassuming, but she's great at damn near everything she does. Gaming, sports, whatever. Futaki is a jack of all trades, so you can't let the emoji face fool you. In chapter 190 though, we get characterization for Futaki as we see how she deals with insults hurled her way. Futaki is unbothered by bad mouthing due to her being accustomed to toxic environments thanks to her history of gaming. I personally love how Nico Tanigawa uses that aspect of Futaki's character and makes it relevant to her real world outlook on life. It's not crazy deep, but it's realistic that Futaki's gaming life and the consequential insults she gets from randoms and lobbies will make her skin thicker than most, making her the perfect counter to the mean girls. With us having Futaki's perspective, it's safe to assume that the budding friendship of her and Minami is mutual. Minami constantly hangs out with Futaki during lunch and has made an impact. Futaki admits as much when she tells Minami that she felt uncomfortable working out during lunch when Minami was not there. So I'm happy that these two are building a true bond. On the flip side, it's time to bring up the biggest anomaly in WataMote, who has swiftly become a fan favorite, Sachi. First off, Sachi's design is great. She has these vacant eyes that makes her really memorable and look eerie. It reminds me of how Ozen from Made in Abyss is drawn. Sachi, like the other mean girls, has been faceless up to chapter 188, so the obvious question is why? There's two possibilities that I see. Number one, Nico Tanigawa might have been going for the symbolic approach, giving us the message that the mean girls are unified in identity. And number two, the faceless imagery can also be used to emphasize that Minami and the rest of the mean girls aren't really friends. Now this isn't a new technique, I've seen it in Kaguya-sama as well as a silent voice, but nonetheless it gets the message across. So why does Sachi and Sachi only have a face now? Well, in my opinion, it just shows you that Nico Tanigawa has plans for Sachi. If you pay close attention, while the mean girls were a unit, Sachi and Minami were the closest. Every single time Minami hung out with anyone in a mean girl squad, Sachi was always there, and this is not being hyperbolic. Another thing I noticed was that anytime Minami would reference the mean girls, she'd always do so by first mentioning Sachi and then the other girls, which gives the indication that Minami is closer to Sachi since she is the first person she always thinks about in that group. So since Sachi is close to Minami, I believe her having a face now is in response to her role in the story being upgraded. So what the fuck is the deal with Sachi? To be honest, I'm not entirely sure. Sachi, as I said before, took it upon herself to intentionally tear apart the mean girls, so her actions can be seen as villainous or heroic depending on how you look at it. Is she simply a chaos merchant that wants to see the world burn, or were her actions an attempt to help Minami by making herself the martyr? Personally, while Sachi seems very mysterious, I take what she says at face value. Sachi said that she always hated Maki and she didn't hate Nori as much, so these are characters she doesn't mind falling out with. Sachi's relationship with Minami is different though. As I already stated, Sachi and Minami appear to be the tightest of the mean girls, and Sachi's thoughts on Minami seem more than positive. Even though Sachi has said that Minami has a lousy and obnoxious attitude, weirdly enough, that's not something that turns her off. In fact, to me, and I may be going off the deep end, I believe Sachi has a twisted love for Minami, almost akin to how Illumi treats Killua in Hunter x Hunter. Sachi knows Minami isn't a great person, but it's that bad side of her personality that she is fond of. In chapter 169.5, we see Sachi hang out with Mako and Minami in a restaurant. What I took from that chapter is that Sachi is a mean girl to her core. She finds people like Mako boring, but she loves Minami because she'll join her in bad-mouthing others. Sachi has said Minami is the best in her mind and out loud, so I think it's safe to say that those are her true feelings. In chapter 189, Sachi even admits that she is someone who loves Minami. The other mean girls laughed this statement off, but I think Sachi was dead ass serious. As well, Maki and Nori have noted that Sachi has been irritable since Minami hasn't been showing up to visit her. You can see Sachi visibly agitated by the way she thrusts her straw into her cup when the mean girls are on the topic of Minami hanging out with Futaki's friends. I think the reason for this is simple. Sachi was jealous, especially since Minami was spending time with other people she thought were creeps. Because of who they are, maybe she's even afraid of Futaki's friends changing Minami into a normal and decent person, which Sachi would have no interest in. This is all speculation on my part, nothing's been confirmed, but I think there's enough information at least to consider my claim. The reason I call what Sachi feels for Minami twisted love though is because Sachi isn't too affectionate. Sachi makes fun of Minami all the time, much to her dismay. So while Sachi is very fond of Minami, she expresses it in a terrible way. It would be interesting to see whether or not Sachi and Minami will retain their friendship. If I'm right about Sachi, I don't think she would be a fan of Minami changing for the better, so she might be someone who Minami would be better off not associating with anymore if she truly wants to improve. At the very least, they need another one-on-one conversation to hash things out, so I guess we'll see what comes from that. Next in line is Yuri, who is someone whose actions can easily go unnoticed. It was a small gesture, but in chapter 187, when Yuri sees Minami eating lunch with Futaki instead of Mako, she asks Mako if she's okay with this. The reason why Yuri asks this is because she knows that Mako usually eats lunch with Minami, and while it may seem like her concern is focused on Mako, I think it's actually for Minami. While we know Yuri doesn't like Minami, it doesn't mean that she doesn't care about her at all. On the contrary, she's looked out for her before. In chapter 129, after Minami separates from the mean girls and is all alone, without Yuri even looking at Minami's face, she seems to immediately know that she is in need of comfort and tells Mako to go with her. If Yuri didn't care about Minami at all, she wouldn't have bothered to say anything, which is within her character as she is someone who can be cold at times. Lightly covering up more points, Tomoko's growth has been put on display, seeing as how she's taken the initiative to start this movie. We even see her present her idea to the front of the class, which she struggled with, but it's a big leap for her, so it's expected. Nemo also deserves credit for pushing Tomoko into that position. I especially love the dynamic of those two because they bring out the best in each other, I feel. Tomoko won't let Nemo forget her otaku roots, and Nemo won't allow Tomoko to stay in her comfort shell. I also have a suspicion that WataMote might end soon. This movie feels like something you get in a twilight of a series. I have nothing to base my claim on, again it's just a feeling and I hope I'm wrong. Aside from the serious stuff, I love the casting couch joke in 190. I always gotta appreciate the crude humor in the series. I can't see many manga having the stones to make the same joke. It's also funny to see Mako increasingly get more assertive. I think she might really snap on someone like we never seen before. But guys, that is it for this review. I know this was long, but I thank you for sticking with me. I wanted to cover a lot, so it ended up that way, but I want to hear you guys' thoughts on everything that transpired in these chapters. Please give the video a like, subscribe if you haven't, as I promise to hold the WataMote community down. I'm Satsuki the Savage, and I am out.
Tasting your soul, you're not in control, just giving you goals. Scared of your past, the future is closed. The start is the end is a start. They both are the same, can't tell them apart. Nigga, that's cuz the intro was the outro.